Hey, how's it going, my bones? SilverDFanng back with more YouTube reactions. This is a weird one. Not just because it's in the title. Be Amazed, Craziest Soviet Machines, Part 1. You are in for a historical treat of madness and Soviet technology. Enjoy.
For almost...
Okay, we'll watch this. No, I don't want to put time limit on videos. I like longer videos. It's just right now I don't have time for a 15-minute video. That's all. I will come back to it for sure. I have a few longer ones I have in the docket. It's just it's first come first serve unless time. That's all. Okay, be amazed. Craziest Soviet machines you won't believe exist.
70 years, the Soviet Union was a superpower that was virtually unmatched when it came to mechanical might.
And
they
beards.
invested in many experimental designs to prove their power to the world. But some vehicles that emerged from the socialist state were jaw-dropping, but for all the wrong reasons. From fortresses with wings to screw-propelled trucks and even flying saucers, no Soviet design was too much or too mad. So buckle up and brace yourselves, because we're about to take a look at some of the craziest Soviet vehicles that you won't believe are real. The 2B1 Oka. In the Soviet...
Okay, someone's compensating. Oh, your tank has a 5-inch? Well, I got a 12-inch nozzle on my tank. Someone's compensating.
The 2B1 Oka. In the Soviet Union, the idea of bigger is always better was made pretty clear from the creation of the 2B1 Oka. This very, well-endowed experimental artillery model was...
We all know why they made this. This was a dick joke.
Designed back in 1957, just as the Cold War was beginning to heat up. America had recently rolled out their Atomic Annie mortar, which fired huge 280mm atomic shells, making it a wagon that could shoot relatively small nuclear bombs. In retaliation, the Soviet military developed two...
We don't deserve to live, man. We were making nuclear bombs and nuclear tiny bombs, man.
Self-propelled nuclear artillery systems of their own. And as you probably guessed, one of them was the utterly insane 2B1 Oka. The barrel of this cannon was a horrifying 65 feet long. For contrast...
Nah, he rounded that up. Everyone knows it's a 64.8.
An entire Sherman tank is just 20 feet long. At this staggering size, the barrel could fire 420mm rounds that weighed a colossal 1,650 pounds apiece and could...
Blaze, it's not just the U.S.
land an atomic explosion 28 miles away. Unfortunately for the Oka, its huge gun was...
We're all gonna die in nuclear war. It's just win.
Also a huge problem. With rounds that weighed more than a grand piano, the cannon's laborious loading process meant the Oka could only fire once every 5 minutes. On top of that, the recoil of the colossal cannon was too much for the rest of the vehicle to endure. The steely chassis was damaged with every shot and would even rip the gearbox from its mountings. Thankfully, this insane design was abandoned in the 1960s when big guns made way for big missiles. But even though it was never used in combat, I bet just rolling it out was enough to give Soviet enemies a real good scare. The 1K-17 Shatya. If sci-fi movies are anything to go by, the battlefields of the future will have lasers flying in every direction. And while modern militaries are developing laser technology, there's one Soviet vehicle that's already built for a futuristic laser fight. This is the...
It does look like something that was at the battle for Naboo.
1K-17 Shatya. also known as the Soviet laser tank. It was developed
I'd
back
be
in the
firing my
1970s,
laser.
although it wasn't built to burn holes through the enemy. The array of 13 lasers on top of the tank chassis focused a powerful light source through synthetically grown rubies, with each one weighing a staggering 66 pounds.
Jesus.
When the array was fired in pulses, the Shatya could destroy the optical sensors on enemy vehicles and missiles, and even cause immediate blindness when fired at enemy troops. Now, that's what I call ultimate laser tag.
That's
But
interesting.
this otherworldly weapon never entered service for a number of very good reasons. Firstly, rubies that are heavier than a large microwave oven are
Expensive.
not cheap to
Yeah.
produce. And secondly, it would have violated the Geneva Convention's protocol on blinding laser weapons if it was ever used in an anti-infantry role. Like war wasn't bad enough, using this would have landed them with a lot of powerful enemies.
I mean, I don't know. Geneva suggestions. Yeah, let's be honest. Trump just literally a few weeks ago was like, yeah, we made audio sonar weapons. It's cool. You don't even have to get close. All you have to do is point it and boom, blood comes out. Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
The Geneva's a
I'm
joke.
Doc.
So it's a good thing that when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, any plans of mass laser tank production fell with it. Okay, I want to do a quick poll. If you had the choice between a 65-foot gun of the Oka or the lasers of the Geneva Convention breaking Shatya, which would you rather fire?
Laser. I don't need to compensate. My penis is fine.
For the enormous Oka, hit that like button. And for the In the 1930s, a little over a decade since the end of the First World War, Soviet Russia realized that the skies would be the battlegrounds of the future. So it began developing experimental aircraft just in case a Second World War started. Spoiler alert, it did. Now, Russia was ready to take to the air, but one of the vehicles they created looked more like a flying circus than a military machine. The Svenno project, also called the Chain Link project, involved a bomber that had been specially modified not to carry bombs, but smaller fighter planes. It was an out-of-the-box plan to save fuel on the front lines, as bombers were much more fuel-efficient than the smaller fighters. After takeoff, the fighters docked with the carrier while in flight by using some special
Weird.
fastenings. And once they were all strapped down, the bomber flew them off into the fight and refueled them on the way. Each of these amazing motherships could carry up to 5 fighters, and each fighter was loaded
In my head, all I can think is we could use this for some really cool aerial acrobatics.
up with around 1,000 pounds of bombs. So if you saw one of these things on the horizon, you knew you were in for a whole swarm of trouble. Even though these creative craft were used successfully at the beginning of World War II, the Svenno project wasn't developed any further. During the wartime technology boom, these aircraft quickly became obsolete and were replaced by state-of-the-art fighter jets. Well, the design didn't fly with the military, but I wonder if the project found a home in the Soviet circus scene.
See? I agree.
The Antonov A-40. The Soviets may have given up on that fortified flying circus, but they were far from done with crazy aircraft designs. Don't believe me? Then just feast your eyes on the unbelievable
They made a fucking flying tank. Oh my fucking god.
Antonov A-40. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's a tank with wings. This astonishing
Hans, we are waiting for your next weapon. Tank with wings. Hans, you are fired, and by that I mean you will be set on fire. I understand.
Soviet prototype was built almost 80 years ago to determine if gliding a tank straight onto a battlefield was possible. At the time, the Soviets were testing whether bombers could be used to drop tanks into position mid-battle. Some of these tests even plunged the tanks into bodies of water to
Yeah, famously, World War II planes. Accuracy was awful. There's a reason why bombs were very easy to get wrong, and there was a lot of just destruction where they didn't want it. It's not easy to aim from that far up. Wind is a big factor.
See what damage they sustained on impact. But in 1942, Soviet glider designer Oleg Antonov took the idea one step further. He created a detachable cradle made up of biplane wings and a twin tail that could be attached onto the chassis of a light tank. The A-40 would then be towed behind a bomber and released, gliding into enemy territory where it could shed its wings and fight as a standard tank. However, during the A-40's maiden flight, the bomber towing it was forced to drop it early because of the incredible amount of drag the tank generated. It was more like an anchor than an aircraft. Even though the tank and its driver managed to survive the fall, the project didn't. It was, ironically, dropped in favor of a more conventional weapons system.
Bombs.
Much to the relief of that poor tank driver, I'm sure. The Mil-Me-10. Now, when the Soviet military was...
Does the helicopter have a smiley face? It has a smiley face and googly eyes. I kind of love it.
The Mil-Me-10. Now, when the Soviet military wanted some seriously heavy lifting done, they called in a Mil-Me-10 helicopter.
Hi guys, it's me,
Despite looking like the love child of a
guys.
helicopter and a spider, the long legs on this chopper weren't for climbing up buildings or weaving webs between the clouds. It was designed in the late 1950s to carry big, bulky loads that the Union's largest helicopters at the time, the Mil-Me-6, couldn't fit in its hold. While the Mi-6 could carry a little over 13 tons,
why do they all have
lighter...
Why do they all have googly eyes? They all have googly eyes and like weird like Thomas the Tank Engine mouths.
Design and external platform allowed it to load up to 15 tons of oddly shaped equipment. With those long, gangly legs making it almost 30 feet high, the chopper could taxi over its loads, attach them to its fuselage, and fly off with everything in tow. This ranged from trucks and buses to fully built buildings. It was such a strange and shocking sight to behold that the Mi-10 was featured in demonstrations and air shows all over the world to show off its unique feature. Even though mass production of this wacky flying crane design didn't take off,
Incoming
55 Mi-10s were produced during the 1960s, and some were still in use up to 2013.
Nice.
I guess a good set of legs never really goes out of style.
No one ever says, hey, bad legs, nice legs.
Oh. The K-84 Yekaterinburg. From the 1950s through to 1997, the Soviet Union and later Russia built a total of 245 nuclear-powered submarines. This was more than all other nations combined.
Damn.
But the Soviet submarine obsession almost caused one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. In 2011, the nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine K-84, also known as Yekaterinburg,
Oh wow, this is
made a quick
recent.
stop in a dry dock. Built in 1982, the
Oh,
almost
okay.
550-foot-long sub was powered by 2 nuclear reactors and could carry up to...
Why did anyone think this was a good idea? This is a moving, ticking time bomb.
16 nuclear missiles, but during some routine welding work, a fatal fire broke out along the wooden scaffolding surrounding its bow. This quickly spread to the submarine itself, and for a whole heart-stopping day, firefighters struggled to control the blaze. The sub had been carrying just 4 nuclear missiles.
The amount of times where Russia almost blows itself up with nuclear energy is way too much.
At the time, but if it had exploded, it would have caused a nuclear accident comparable to the infamous Chernobyl meltdown.
Yep.
As catastrophic as it could have been, the K-84 was gradually repaired, exposing the sheer size of the sub's sonar array. It may be a nuclear death trap, but does anyone else think it looks like that cool ship from the Disney film Atlantis?
It
Though
does.
It looks like
It's
something out of a
terrifying.
sci-fi adventure. That big bulb is actually the sonar array's acoustic chamber. This is used to analyze sound waves from sonar equipment and translate it into visual data, so that the sub can navigate underwater. As cool as it looks, this chamber was filled with a highly flammable liquid.
Oh my god. Russia, USSR. Someone had to take away your your toys. So, like, not for anyone else's safety, but just for your own. Like, god damn, you guys are just trying to kill yourselves. He usually switches between Russia and North Korea, who almost blew themselves up. China used to be in mix until told forced to knock it off. Yeah.
That almost ignited during the incident. I don't know what's crazier, the fact that these subs are practically bombs made out of bombs,
yes,
or that the Soviets once had 245 of them.
Yeah. Or the fact that they probably still have them, not in use, but just around, because they probably didn't deactivate them.
M15 Belfegor. Often referred to as the ugliest plane in the world, the M15 Belfegor certainly isn't the prettiest aircraft to look at. Hailing from the Soviet satellite state of Poland, this government-designed crop duster was meant to replace the old reliable An-2 biplane, but the M15 was not what anyone in their right mind would call an improvement. Like the An-2, the Belfegor was also a biplane, but its design traded a propeller-based turboprop engine for a turbofan-based jet engine. These powerful engines are intended for aircraft that need to reach high speeds, so using one in an agricultural aircraft was a weird world first. Despite this, it was able to carry up to 3 tons of pesticides in the huge pylons separating its wings. So the Soviet bloc had huge expectations for the plane. But in reality, the design was a disaster. For a start, it had a maximum range of just 215 nautical miles.
I don't know what that means.
Half that of the An-2. The jet engine was also more difficult to fix than a turboprop, and it cost much limited monoplan. One of the most unusual vehicles from the time of the Cold War,
I didn't care about the foreign plane.
Has to be the Lune-class Ikranoplan. At a gargantuan 242 feet long with a wingspan of 144 feet, this bizarre beast could only just fit inside the lines of a standard American football field. You may think, with all those wings and jet engines, that it's some sort of Soviet aircraft, but this amazing machine is actually a boat plane.
Are you fucking serious? It's a boat plane? Oh my god. Russia had too much money.
Hybrid. Instead of taking to the skies or chugging across the seas, the Ekranoplan exploits something called the wing-in-ground effect. As it flies closer to the ground, air pressure builds between its specially shaped wings and the surface below. This creates a cushion of air beneath the plane.
They made a hovercraft! Oh my god.
Allowing the entire vehicle to float just inches over the surface of a lake or ocean. And by mounting 8 turbojet engines to the front, this behemoth could travel at a terrifying top speed of 340 miles per hour. Not only that, but its sheer size meant it could carry upwards of 110 tons. So it had the capacity of a ship with all the speed of an aircraft.
Russia.
On top of that, can you see those 6 twinned cylinders lining its top? Those aren't party poppers, they're missile launchers.
You would have to stop the boat plane to use them. Because there's no way that you can get a good, accurate shot going 340 miles per hour.
With all that speed and firepower, these monsters were designed to take out any incoming U.S. aircraft carriers intruding in Union waters. One prototype entered military service in 1987, but when the Soviet regime crumbled 4 years later, this low-flying hybrid was left to gather dust. Although, if Russia ever needed to fight against a big ol' sea monster, I think I know which machine they'd bring out of retirement.
That's the other thing. You're not going to hit a plane. You might hit a massive blob of a monster, but you're not hitting a plane with that.
Project EKIP. As much as I hate to admit it, the tin hat-loving conspiracy theorists are right. UFOs do exist, but they don't come from outer space. They come from Soviet Russia. Say hello to the E-Kip, the Soviet aircraft that looks like it was made on Mars. Conceptualized back in 1978, this Russian flying saucer
feels like something from the
resemble any
70s.
other plane of its time, or our time, come to think of it. Its striking domed design was based on aircraft that didn't have any distinguishable fuselage, like certain stealth bombers and reconnaissance aircraft. The elliptical shape acted like one big wing, and with its turbojet engine, this strange saucer could rely on air cushion technology to take off and land, just like the Ekranoplan. This meant...
So what you're telling me is the USSR really wanted to make hovercrafts a thing. They did more work for the hover skateboard than America ever has. They're the real Back to the Future fan.
it could take off from the ground as well as from the water. It was a truly alien concept, but an all-terrain aircraft was obviously appealing to the Soviet Union's military, no matter what it looked like. As the prototypes were being developed, engineers estimated that this highly aerodynamic design would only...
Yeah, the 60s to the 80s was very much... it's the Cold War. It was big on secrecy, but it was also USSR and America showing their penises at each other and being like, oh, you do this, but we're going to do this better. You did this, we're going to do this. It was stupid.
only use 14 grams of fuel per passenger kilometer. For contrast, regular planes at the time used 45 grams of fuel per passenger kilometer. And the commercial implications this had were huge. So larger models,
Nice
like
to
the
meet
L3,
you.
were designed to
I'm
carry
Doth.
up to 400 passengers, and others would even be able to carry passengers alongside their cars. But its fate, like so many other crazy Soviet vehicles, was bound to the demise of the Union. The E-Kip program ground to a halt and, sadly, never took off. But if it had, could you imagine what our airports would look like today? I'd take a trip on a UFO over an economy seat any day. The Baratini Bari VVA-14. A lot of these experimental
It's another tank plane. It's another fucking tank plane.
Soviet vehicles look like they've been plucked straight out of sci-fi films, but the Baratini Bari VVA-14 might just have inspired one. It closely resembles Star Wars' famous Millennium Falcon, but it was created in 1972, almost 5 years before Star Wars hit the
Knowing George Lucas, he might have been paying attention to USSR stuff.
silver screen. Looks like George Lucas has some serious explaining to do. The VVA stands for Vertikalno Vzletayskaya Amphibia, or
Katushtai.
Vertical Takeoff Amphibious Aircraft if you're not fluent in Russian, like me. Like its title suggests, it could take off from the water and fly at altitudes of up to 33,000 feet, but it could also fly just a few feet over the ocean waves, using that previously mentioned wing-in-ground effect. It achieved this thanks to two large pods you can see connected to the fuselage. The two engines at the front create a cushion of air by directing the exhaust into narrow channels between the fuselage and the pods, allowing the plane to skirt over the waves. It needed this sea-skirting ability to destroy the USA's Polaris submarine missiles, which kept the Soviet Union awake at night during the Cold War. Initially, the VVA-14 was designed with 12 lift engines for vertical takeoff and landing abilities, but This project hit a wall. The two prototypes that were built were retired in 1987, although
I don't know why, but the boat planes bore me.
legacy clearly lives on in the Star Wars franchise. The
Yeah, this is what I'm
ZVM-290
talking about.
all-terrain vehicles
Tell me about the drill truck.
are designed to conquer everything off-road. With huge wheels or caterpillar tracks, they can make quick work of any type of terrain and look incredibly cool doing so. But back in the 1970s, in an effort to think outside the box, Soviet Russia's engineers brought the strangely screw-propelled ZVM-2901 to the table. They'd fused the cab from a UAZ-452 van with two huge hollow screw drives.
It's a Volkswagen beetle van with screwdriver wheels.
The blades of which dug into the terrain and propelled the vehicle over it. The result was a vehicle that could plow through thick swamps, miles of mud, and even float over the water.
This is what Florida needs. Florida needs to invest in drill trucks for the future.
Even though it was practically unstoppable, using screws cost the vehicle its speed. With a 152 horsepower engine, it could make it to just 15 miles per hour.
Pretty slow.
And cruising through the water brought that down to just 6 miles per hour.
Pretty bad.
It had been based on similar screw-propelled designs
But I think we can evolve from
like
it.
Chrysler's Marsh Screw Amphibian, which was abandoned because of those laughably low top speeds. That didn't deter Soviet Russia from taking a stab at it, though. While the experimental design was incredibly eye-catching, vehicle speeds and applications of tracked and tired vehicles were...
Blaze just said, reminder, the U.S. built a truck on like basically balloon wheels that you could run over a human and survive. I think at that point, I think you're trying to stop the wrong situation.
vastly superior, and so this screwy design was left in the past. The Kalinian K7.
I don't care.
All you had to do with wing years after the Rega monstrosity, 70 bigger than that engines, with seated on the wing, largest plane for different. Oh, it would have had tons of flight. The only its get point flying failing not have been Soviet. The Tsar tank.
Yeah!
Now, this next machine may not have been Soviet, but you can definitely tell it was made by Russia. In the middle of World War I, Russian engineers decided to build a tank the height of a 3-story house with guns that could obliterate an entire forest. The large front wheels were 30 feet in diameter, and its main body...
Russia looked at the penny bike with its big wheel, and it's like, we need to make a tank out of that.
They stretched back almost 60 feet to connect to a single rear wheel. 2 turrets full of cannons and machine guns were bolted on top and underneath the raised carriage. And to add the cherry on top, additional machine guns lined the armored pods on each side of the wheels to protect the tank from infantry. This was clearly the king of all tanks.
Yeah!
And so they aptly named it the Tsar tank. But what mad idea inspired this colossal design? At the time, the Russians were looking for a way to break through the Eastern Front trench system. Instead of tanks with traditional tracks, they decided to experiment with massive spoked wheels. However, this 60-ton steel behemoth wasn't designed to be on the battlefield.
Nice to meet you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, wait, no. They meant it for war, but it didn't work. Okay, my bad.
To some bad engineering, that small rear wheel bore too much of the tank's enormous weight and was prone to getting stuck in soft ground and ditches.
Yeah,
then,
no shit.
During its testing phase, it got embarrassingly stuck in a field and couldn't be dug out. The Tsar tank remained...
What? This massive behemoth of metal and its weird wheels doesn't work in the muddy terrain of most of Europe? Shocker.
Rusting there throughout the war until it was finally scrapped in 1923. Now that was one really big waste. The evolution of Maz trucks. Way back in 1954, the Minsk Autosavad, abbreviated to Maz, was founded in Soviet-ruled Minsk. This factory produced some of the most reliable and diverse tractors of the Soviet market, often turning the vehicles into all-terrain trucks that could carry massive loads, like the Maz 529. This uniaxial engine could tow up to 34 tons of just about anything, from cement mixers to ice rinks. This caught the attention of the Soviet military, who commissioned the factory's first biaxial vehicle, the Maz 535. And this 8x8 beast of a tractor didn't spread manure, it spread munitions. At almost 30 feet long and 10 feet wide, it could carry up to 8 tons, meaning it could tow anything from tanks to massive missiles. But this wasn't Maz's final form. As the Soviet Union began making bigger ballistic missiles in the 1960s, the Maz...
Again, it's a big measuring contest between the US and Russia.
543 was created to carry them. As you can see, the front cabin was split into two, though it was only driven from the left compartment. The divot this left in the middle of the truck allowed it to horizontally carry sensitive loads that weighed up to 15 tons. Although, they didn't stop there. As the size of the rockets increased, so did the Maz, leading to the creation of the astonishing 12x12 Maz 547.
So
this
dumb.
six-axle
I love
truck
it.
could carry a staggering 62-ton payload, and with its 625 horsepower engine, could move at a top speed of 24 miles per hour. But then, somehow, the rockets got even bigger.
It's so dumb, but so is much of this. Kai's like, sensitive load is what I call my penis.
And so did the Maz. The next successor, the Maz 7904, was a whopping 100 feet long, 20 feet wide, and could carry missiles weighing a terrifying 200 tons.
Okay, that is literally just a penis. They literally just made a penis truck.
Whoa, those cabins are so far apart that this truck is starting to resemble that sloth from Ice Age. But did they stop there? Of course not. Meet the jaw-dropping 24x24 wheel 12-axle Maz 7907. This monstrous machine was designed
Oh, hey, they made the compartment one thing again.
to carry the Zelina 2 missiles, which were going to weigh over 100 tons and measure in at a staggering 74 feet long. That's almost the same size as a 6-story building. Unfortunately, the Soviet Union collapsed before the project could launch, and only a few prototype 7907s were made. This was the end of the road for the mad military Maz designs, but what a wild and wheelie ride it was. Which of these Soviet vehicles did you think was the most insane?
I want drill truck. I want drill truck. I want drill truck. Hey, thanks for checking out this video. Check me out on Twitch, SilverDFanng, 2 N's in Fang. Check me out on Twitter and Blue Sky under the same name. Also TikTok. Have a great night.